So we're revisiting this tremendous book by Dr. Haim Beinart, Atlas of Medieval Jewish History. So what you see here are maps to have some idea for those of us who are interested in history, because to understand who you are, it's really important to understand how we got here. How, in fact, with the scattering throughout all of these different nations, with the persecutions of the church, with the restrictions placed on us by the Muslims, how in fact we did prosper enough to be able to survive. We haven't gotten to the real worst of it yet, as we are going to see when we get to Spain. And people have asked me, some people have asked me, about Jewish history because they think that their families may be Jews, but they're not Jewish. But they're thinking that maybe they are Jewish. And so if anybody has a background from Spain, especially if you're from Cuba, the possibilities are very strong that in fact that you really are Jewish, but you've been forcibly converted to Christianity. Now, in the Muslim countries, it didn't happen so much. It was a much lower, slower level. The angst against the Jews was most strong in Christian Europe. So let's come over here, and we keep moving along, and now we're into a section. Let me see if I can find this. Where is it? It's over here. Let's look at Italy, right? Italy is where Rome is located, right? It's the place of the Vatican. Now, as you look at this map, we'll look at it real quickly first. You see the Christian entity, which is called the Holy Roman Empire, extended all the way down through these different areas in Italy. That which is marked in blue really refers to Byzantium. So let me get this over here a little bit better so they can see it. We're going to go through this map at the end. And we'll see what's actually happening in the world that affects us, because we live in between these two powers, that is the Holy Roman Catholic Empire and the Holy Eastern Catholic Empire called Byzantium. This is what's happening in the northern part of the Mediterranean. So let's say like this. It's called Italy in the framework of Byzantium and the Holy Roman Empire, and the time we're talking about is the 800s and the 900s, the 9th and the 10th century. So this is how we're creeping along through Jewish history. The most important political factors for an understanding of the period are the political status of Byzantium in southern Italy. Now you see that the boot of Italy here, there's a nice little boot here. It's all in blue. That means that the Eastern Romans, now you see to understand Eastern Romans, this is like what we understand as the Greek Orthodox, what we call the Orthodox Roman Catholics. They're also Roman Catholics, but they're Eastern Roman Catholics, going all the way across the Balkans into Turkey and beyond. I don't know exactly where they're holding in the Holy Land at this time, who controls it, but we shall see. So he says the northern and southern parts of the peninsula. So, Rome as the papal seat and the rise of the city-states in the central and northern parts of the peninsula. So you said all this interesting thing about Italy is that it was always composed of a whole bunch of different states that didn't get along. So we have Lombardy, and we have Romagna, and Tuscany, states of the church over here in Spoleto, etc., etc. Now, all of these places down here, these places are really controlled by the Byzantium, Calabria, Apulia, those places. Now, let's go on. Let's see whether the situation did not change very much. Let me see how we can get this over here. We have to kind of adjust ourselves. So the situation did not change very much. Even after the incorporation of northern Italy into the Holy Roman Empire, so it became a part of that, nor after the Muslim conquests in southern Italy, which we shall discuss. In other words, a number of forces, religious or political, combined to rule Italy, and within this framework we lived in the Jewish community, often in very difficult circumstances. When there's wars between our Gentile neighbors, we're in the middle. In the struggle of power in southern Italy, the Muslims tried to oust Byzantium, and gain a foothold in Europe. So this is the southern part of Italy. This is where the Muslims wanted to take over this section right here. Bring it down a little bit. This area in blue, the Muslims wanted it. From 652, which is the 7th century, until the 1820s, which is the 8th century, Italian cities were at the mercy of Muslim bands based in Tunisia and the adjacent islands, whence they engaged in pillaging raids with no intent to conquer territory. They were just raping and murdering and stealing. It was only in 827 that actual steps were taken to conquer Sicily, and in 831 Palermo, which is in Sicily, became the Muslim capital city on the island. Messina was captured in 843, so you see what's happening in Syracuse in 878, and this is what's happening in Italy, in Sicily. In their military campaigns, the Muslim invaders took control of the Straits of Messina, which is, can we see this on this map? The straits here is Messina, and these are the straits between the boot and the island. So he said the Straits of Messina. Let me move this down a little bit more. We'll come back to the map in a minute. So he says, and the Muslims for a while held Bari, which we're going to see where that is, and Taranto, presenting a serious threat to Rome. In 846, Rome was invaded and a number of churches were looted. It was only toward the end of the century, 895-896, and we're at the end of the 9th century, that a peace treaty was signed between Byzantium and the Muslims. Sicily was ceded to the Muslims. At first, the island was dependent upon Tunisia, but when Tunisia was conquered by the Fatimids, it became part of the Fatimid. I don't know if you pronounce it Fatimid, or Fatimid Caliphate. So in other words, because whoever this family of Muslims were. After Cairo became the capital of the Fatimid dynasty, their influence on Sicily slackened, so that everything moved further to the east, and the island was ruled by a local family instead. Now, the largest Jewish community on the island was in Palermo, where the Jewish quarter was located outside the city walls. 67, so here in the 10th century, and was probably the residence of the judge Mazliah ben Eliyahu al-Mazak, believed to be the teacher of the celebrated Talmudist Nathan ben Yehiel of Rome. Now, this is different kind of places. You're seeing where this information comes from. A lot of it comes from the Geniza in Cairo, which means a hidden storehouse of documents, which were preserved. So, in 1030, 2 Spanish Jews, one was named Haim and his son Nissim, assisted the Jews of Sicily by obtaining tax reductions and protection for Jewish merchants who traded with Sicilians. So, here the Jewish people are like we are today. We are a nation within a nation. We are a nation with a different religion, a different outlook, living amongst people we consider to be barbarians, but we are a conquered people. The Jews of Palermo wrote to the rabbis of Kairouan about the activities of Haim and Nisan, so we have some evidence. The Spanish Jew named Moses served at the court of the ruler of Sicily, Samsam al-Dalal, and accompanied the latter on his journey to Egypt. So we have this information which collected by Haim Beinart. The Jews of southern Italy engaged in cloth dyeing and silk weaving. Many were also farmers. Otranto and Bari, which are on the sea, were tourist centers and renowned for their scholarship. Evidence of knowledge of Jewish tradition by the Jews of southern Italy can be found in contemporary tombstones engraved in Hebrew. So we know we were there. He says, historical evidence from northern Italy indicates the existence of small Jewish communities located chiefly in small and medium-sized towns. Now, parenthetically, in these communities is where the Zohar and Jewish mysticism developed. Places like Ferrara, Bologna, Modena, Padua, Mantua, which is mentioned in the Sefer Tzniut as a place called Mantoba, but the name has been changed, Treviso and Milan. There were others as well. There is further evidence that the famous Colonimus family settled in Lucca in the state of Tuscany, 9th century. and there founded a Talmudic academy. So the effort to promote our relationship with God was very strong in the midst of living amongst our enemies. Around the year 1000, some members of the family emigrated to Mainz, where they established themselves and founded a yeshiva. Now, the Jews of Tuscany were known to have owned vineyards, and their presence in Modena is mentioned in a document dated on the year 1025. So here we see different documentations of where we have been. Venice was under the influence of Byzantium, and in 945 forbade her ship captains to haul Jewish cargo or to carry Jewish passengers to the east. So we understand that Byzantium deeply, deeply anti-Jewish. Louis II, grandson of Charlemagne, in 855 ordered the expulsion of Italian Jews from the territories he ruled, but it is doubtful whether this decree was ever implemented. In 850, the church council at Cecchino forbade the employment of Jews as tax collectors or as arbiters between Jews and Christians. And in Verona, Bishop Rotharius repeated the allegations of Abregard of Lyon against the Jews, against exciting the population against the Jews. Italy was a repository of Jewish traditions and customs and served as a bridge for Jews who passed from the Holy Land mainly into the Holy Roman Empire through Sicily, and from there to Egypt and to Byzantium. So let's come over here and just take a quick look at this map and try to find where we're at. See if I can get down closer to it so that it's easier to read. So let's look at it like this. So you see here the Holy Roman Empire extending into southern France, into Germany, etc., etc. Austria, today Austria. Let's find our numbers here and let's go over we had discussed the various different states of Italy. And we discussed also the fact that the blue represents another empire, the empire of the Eastern Christians, of Byzantium. So let's go over here in the year 850. Here we are in Pavia, a place called Po, or Pavia on the river Po. Church council forbids Jews to serve as tax collectors or arbitrators between Jews and Christians. So we also had these restrictions against Jews. That was number one. Number two, Louis II orders expulsions of Jews from northern Italy. So the decree apparently never was implemented. Very often these decrees could be changed by bribes. Then we go over here, number three. Bishop Ruthenius of Verona. There's Verona down here. He says, complains of excessively tolerant attitudes towards Jews. What a shame. Number four. Now, sometimes it's hard to find. Here we go. Here's number four. He said, Shapatia, the head of Jewish community in Oria. So here we're talking about here, down here. I don't know. He's pointing to number four is, not sure, here. In a place called Cures, daughter of Emperor Basil I, and consequently, as a result of that, obtains cancellation of an edict of a conversion issued by the emperor. So Byzantium was really like foaming at the mouth to destroy Jews. Number five, Shephatiah acts as intermediary between Byzantium, the governor of Byzantine, and the conquering Arab general. So apparently, where was this? Can I see it? It's right in this area here, because these are the Muslims are now starting to take over the southern part of Italy. That was number six. Number seven, in the year 925, Hasidiya and 9 rabbis killed by Arabs because of their loyalty to Byzantium. Number 8. Where is number 8? It's in here. Still looking. 6, 7, 8. Physician and philosopher Shabbatai Donolo, born in Oria in 913, exiled in his youth to Palermo and Africa, and also then Africa, and ransomed by relatives in Taranto, eventually became court physician to Byzantine governor of Calabria. So this is an amazing thing. The people who hate us, but they use us anyway. And we prosper in the midst of suffering. Number 9. In the year 950, Patio ben Hasidayah backs Imam al-Muizz, I don't know these names, and prophesies that he will conquer southern Italy. The Imam takes him to his court at Kairouan in the year 969. Al-Muizz appoints Paltiel minister at Caliphate in Cairo. Once again, the Jews at the very top levels of the governments of these places. Number 10. He says, Josephon, important Jewish historiographic book written here. So Josephon is the name of a book. It's apparently an historical graphic which was written over here in, where? Palermo? Not sure. There's no arrow. Number 11. Hananel II gives permission from Byzantine emperor, so here we down here, to search empire for family property lost during wars. So we have documentation of that. After Pergnations settles in Benevenito. We have a number 12. That was number 11. I think that's it. Those are the different historical things that we know that Dr. Beinart was able to produce over here. This is Baruch Fleischman. This is the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, Jewish History, How We Survived the Middle Ages.